You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you for joining me. We are going to do something a little bit different today, and I ask you to bear with me as I know I don't sound my best. It's early in the morning, allergies, all that, but we'll deal with it just like we've kind of dealt with the preseason, right? The preseason coming to a slog here. At the beginning of it, we're always very excited. We're ready to go. It's live football. And by the end of it, you're pretty much sick of it. That's where we're at. So we're going to do something different today. I'm going to talk about, someone asked me the other day, one of my friends said, what's the floor and ceiling for the Bengals? What's the best and worst case scenarios for the 2024 NFL season? So that's what I want to talk about today. I thought it sounded like a fun episode. I think we're sick of camp. We're sick of practice. We're sick of the preseason. All the things we've been talking about over the past few weeks. We're ready to go. We're ready to move forward into live action football. So let's talk about that a little bit today. Let's talk about, if all goes well, how well can things go? If things don't go well, what's the floor? What's the lowest we can go with this team? And that's what I want to get into today. The preseason wrapping up here shortly, and at this point, it's kind of those roster bubble guys. So we'll see. I think if you asked like 75% of Bengals fans right now who won that first game against the Bucs, they wouldn't remember because it doesn't matter. If you ask them who won, name a game from 3 years ago, probably more of them would be able to tell you because the ones that matter are the ones we care about. So as much fun as the preseason is at the beginning of August, by the end of August, we're sick of it. And that's where we're at today. So let's get into this a little bit. Well, let's start with the floor. Let's get the bad one out of the way first. Let's talk about, now I'm going to say right now, we're going to assume in this scenario, Joe Burrow plays all 17 games. I'm done with I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to do the whole, I feel like everyone who talks, and that's fine if you want to, but I feel like everyone who talks about Joe Burrow, anytime they talk about the Bengals season, they say it's all dependent on him staying healthy. And it is, but as long as he's healthy, I'm not going to put that asterisk there every single time we talk about him. So let's go ahead and on this show, in my mind, after we do this, going forward, I'm just kind of done talking about that potential of him being off the field, unless, of course, the unthinkable were to happen. So we won't even go down that route. But the floor of this ceiling with Joe Burrow playing all 17 games, and I truly believe this, and I tried to talk myself off the ledge a little bit. I tried to say, are you being a bit of a homer here? I really don't think I am. I think if Joe Burrow plays all 17 games, worst case scenario for this team is 10-7. 10 wins, 7 losses, assuming Joey B plays all 17 games. That most likely makes you a wild card team in the AFC. Possible in the AFC North, it could win you the division because they're all going to beat up on each other. We know that. But 10-7 is probably a wild card team in the AFC. The Steelers were 10-7 last year, which is incredible to think about. That was probably their ceiling, right? And now we're talking about that being the Bengals' floor a year later. The Steelers were 10-7. They were the AFC's final wild card team. By the way, the Steelers kept it closer than any team in that wild card round last year. They were within a touchdown of the Bills in the fourth quarter. The other two teams, who were they? The Browns just got embarrassed, and the Dolphins went into Kansas City where it was like negative 65 degrees and got housed pretty well. But the floor with Joe Burrow playing all 17 games, I think, is 10-7. Still double-digit wins. I'm going to talk about it a lot, but like how fortunate is this fan base right now to be in a situation where as long as they got that guy on the field, I don't think anyone would argue they're at worst a 10-win team. Double-digit wins is the worst they're going to be, I think. The schedule isn't easy. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the why. Why? Because I don't think anyone's going to complain. We'll see how it would unfold. But if the Bengals were still a wild card team, people are always going to complain. Don't get me wrong about that. But if the Bengals were a wild card team, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, depending on what else happened. But I think if you look at how they would become a wild card team, the schedule is probably where you start. Now, they've got the easiest one in the AFC North. They've got that last place schedule, despite the 9-8 record last year. But still, man, they've got to play the AFC North. We know how tough that can be. It seems like the Browns maybe have a mental edge right now, although I don't buy that. I've heard that from people I listen to and respect. So, and then we know how good the Ravens are. The Steelers, they stink, but they can always be kind of sneaky. Fortunately, the Bengals get them a little later in the season when they're probably already to the point where they're arguing with each other and irritated, and there's a quarterback controversy because neither one's looked great, but neither one's looked awful, and George Pickens is mad because he's not getting enough targets. You know how it's going to unfold later in the season. The Bengals don't have to worry about them early in the season when Mike Tomlin has done an excellent job of convincing them that they can be good, which he is really good at. But the schedule's not easy. They get the Cowboys on the road in primetime. I mean, just going anywhere in primetime on the road is difficult. And I know we kind of like to mock the Cowboys a little bit, but I think over the past 3 years, they have the most wins in the NFC. They don't do anything once they get to the playoffs, but they were the number 2 seed in the AFC last year. That's not an easy one. The Eagles, year in, year out, are awesome. They come to Cincinnati. There's 2 tough ones from the NFC East. On the road in New York, that's another one in the NFC East. Again, the Bengals are a lot better than the Giants. I think that'll be a good early season test because as much better as they are, it's the road in primetime. Go look up whatever the number is. If a home field advantage in primetime is a whole different ball game. And again, this is worst case scenario. We're talking worst case scenario. So don't get too down in the dumps here. This is all theoretical. And they have that ridiculous stretch, which has been talked about, where in a 10-day period, the Cincinnati Bengals have to play 3 NFL games. Let me say that one more time. In a 10-day period, where the massive, most athletic men on the planet are colliding into each other at full speed, the NFL schedule maker said, hey, we know this is a team we like to put in prime time a lot because they're fun to watch. Let's beat the hell out of them as we come down the stretch here. The Bengals have a 10-day period where they'll play 3 games, 2 of them on the road, by the way. It's ridiculous. So at any rate, that schedule is tough. So 10-7, I mean, a lot of times, look, again, I'm talking about the floor here, 10-7. Maybe they get beat up. Injuries are the big one, and that goes both ways. We've already seen the defensive end position take a hit, right? Sam Hubbard still rehabbing. Cam Sample done for the year. Jeff Gunter retires out of nowhere. I don't think anyone expected him to be a piece, but when you're talking about depth, they're already, I mean, it's August. In the defensive end position, it seems like they're already a bit thin. I am recording this prior, so maybe they signed someone in between there, but there's no one out there who's going to come in and be a game changer. You got to hope that Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and Miles Murphy can all stay on the field because that defensive end position already a little thin, and we're not even through August. In general, I mean, you got to keep, we're already looking at Amarius Mims hurt. We know Trent Brown's injury history. That right tackle spot already a little shaky, and that can happen all over the field. The only good place, there's probably several places you feel okay about depth. Tight end's the one that really pops when you look at Mike Gesicki, Tanner Hudson, Andrew Sample. Those are 3 guys who, you know, you wouldn't hate if any of the 3 had to start a game for you. But injuries, that's another big one. Get beat up, we know that. The Bengals know that better than anyone. If they don't get beat up down the stretch in 2022, we could have seen a Super Bowl parade in Cincinnati by now. Maybe some guys don't become who we think they can. I talked about DJ Turner, I think, a couple weeks ago. Maybe DJ Turner isn't your number 2 corner. Maybe they struggle to find someone opposite of Cam Taylor-Britt. DJ Turner was hit or miss last year, and I don't mean to single him out. Maybe the running backs don't produce. We've had Joe Mixon in Cincinnati for a while. Maybe Zach Moss and Chase Brown, maybe they're not what we think they can be. Again, this is worst case scenario. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but when you've got new faces, when you've got new guys taking on bigger roles, sometimes things don't always work out. Remember Irv Smith last year. Everyone, I think, felt he's going to come in from Minnesota. I mean, that guy's had some baller seasons. By the end of the year, he couldn't get in over Tanner Hudson. And that's not a knock on Tanner Hudson. It's just, if you would have told anyone that at the beginning of the year, you would have said, what? That can't be right. And I mean, look, we talk about there's some luck. There's some luck involved. I mean, a tip pass here or there could be the difference in starting 5-2 versus starting 3-4. I mean, we remember a couple years ago, the Steelers opener where the Bengals missed they had 3, an extra point and 2 field goals missed in the final 20, 25 minutes. Just bad luck. Joe Burrow can nickel and dime you all day. You miss that extra point or bobble the snap when you're down 20-19 trying to tie it up in Kansas City in week 2. That could be the difference in 2-0 and 1-1, which could eventually be the difference in 10-7 and 13-4. That's just These little things. Again, we're going over why, if things don't go well, the Bengals end up as a 10-7 team. The terrible, terrible 10-7 team. Look how far we've come in Bengaldom. Remember the days when 10-7 would have been the ceiling. Now we're sitting here, and I think anyone listening realizes Joe Burrow plays all 17 games. That's realistically the floor. We've seen him play so much. Anyone who actually watches knows how great he is. He's the second best quarterback in football. If you want to put him at third behind Josh Allen, A, you're not someone who wears orange and black on Sundays, and that's fine. But B, I'll accept that. But no one can doubt he's a top 3 quarterback. I firmly have him at number 2 if you go and watch. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but some people do, and you're allowed to have your opinion. That's fine. There can be, there's some bad news there. Those would be bad things, but it's the floor. So we'll see. For most teams, the floor, by the way, is like 5-12. We're not talking 5-12 here. We're not if 5-12 happens, and a lot of things have gone wrong, right? A lot of things have gone wrong. If Jamar maybe starts dating a Kardashian, that could be something. Kind of some off-the-field distractions. Nothing too bad, but, Joe Burrow goes to dinner with Ben Roethlisberger when they're in Pittsburgh. Everyone's pissed off about that. These things, that wouldn't happen either. But you get the point. Maybe there's some distractions. Evan McPherson could get arrested, right? No, he couldn't. He's a saint. Now, I say that 10-7 is the floor. There's something below the floor, and that is hell. And that is, of course, if Joe Burrow were to suffer another injury, because then we're not just talking about this season. Then when you really start asking some questions. But I feel better than most about that. I do think the injuries he's suffered have been a little more, I don't know that fluky is the word, but I mean the rookie season, there's nothing anyone could have done. I mean, he's playing behind an offensive line that should have been working, in the kitchen at McDonald's, and no offense, Chad, and he gets rolled up on. No one's surviving that he took in his rookie season. Second season, good. Third season, pretty good, a little beat up here and there. And, of course, I will say before the 2021 season, he was banged up after the Super Bowl, but who wouldn't be after that run behind that line? And then we all know what happened last year between the calf strain in the preseason and just finally goes to the wrist, and who knows if those two things correlated. If you play golf or you're a runner, I do both those things. Sometimes one thing hurts. You try to correct that, and you overcorrect and hurt another thing. I'm not comparing myself to Joe Burrow right now as an athlete, but I understand pain and how you can get banged up. So 10-7, by the way, the Bengals' floor this year is the record they had when they went to the Super Bowl 56. Just what? It's been 3 years now? Yeah, 2021. So, all right, let's talk about the ceiling. Give yourself a second. Think about what the ceiling would be for this team. What's their best case scenario? What record would they have? I say 14-3. I think 14-3, if everything goes well, obviously, if everything goes perfect, 17-0, but I'm not going to go there. That would be outlandish. That would be homerish. We're going to go 14-3 on In the Jungle. The Chiefs have done it twice since Pat Mahomes took over at quarterback there in Kansas City, so it's not unrealistic. I think Baltimore was the last team to do it before that. Maybe Lamar's first MVP season, I want to say. Could be wrong. They've definitely done it. That sounds about right. So it's doable. I feel like 14 wins when there were 16 games, 14-2 is pretty crazy. And now you get one more time to do that. So I think the ceiling for the Bengals this year would be 14-3. That, in all likelihood, gets you the number 1 seed in the AFC. No one, by the way, won 14 games last year in the NFL. The Bengals have never won 14 games in a season in their history. And like I said, almost certainly the number 1 seed if you can win 14 games. So what's the end game? The end game is winning a Super Bowl. We know this team is capable, right? 2 of the last 3 years. 2021, they knocked on the door. They had the lead with, a minute 42 left in the big game. And the year after that, they're back in Kansas City. We're not going to get into that. I'm not going to break hearts. I'm not going to make you want to smash your head into a windshield as you listen to this early on a Friday morning, I think this will be. At any rate, whatever morning it is, I don't want to ruin it for you. What we know is this team, when healthy, and they weren't last year and they still had a winning record, they're really good. They're good enough to go 14-3. We saw that stretch last year where Burrow was at 100%, goes out to San Francisco, dominates the 49ers, who eventually come close to winning the Super Bowl themselves, and then host the Bills, who once again, they just seem to have their number, at least the last few years. They're a really good team. I mean, they really are. I talk about it at length, but we're in the golden era of Cincinnati Bengals football right now, at least in my lifetime, which started in 1989. So it's easy to sit here on a podcast that focus on the Bengals and pick them to win the Super Bowl. There have been times in my life where I probably shouldn't have picked them. There have been times in my life when maybe the ceiling was 10-7, and I said, hey, get hot at the right time. Maybe you can take down Brady or Manning in the playoffs. But that's not the case anymore. Now the Bengals are legitimately a team who anyone wouldn't be insane to pick to win the Super Bowl. So what goes right? If the Bengals were to go 14-3, get all the way back to the game in New Orleans this year, by the way, I mean, is it not meant to be? And win it, what goes right? First and foremost, it's not like a fun topic to talk about, but staying healthy. And that's not just a Bengals thing, by the way. That's a thing across the NFL. If you look at the two Super Bowl teams, they are always among the two healthiest teams going into January, or in that case, going into February. It is so much about it's always one play, right? One wrong step on turf, and you lose a key player for a year. It is always about, for one of the two teams in the Super Bowl, hey, man, we've got 19 of our 22 starters left. From week 1 to the AFC Championship, 19 to 22 guys are still there. For the Bengals, let's just say let's knock that number down to 18. Let's say 18 of their 22 starters are the same when the playoffs start, and that has to obviously include Joe Burrow. Anyone else, as long as it's not 3 offensive linemen and Jamar. Anyone else not named Burrow, take any combination of whatever 4 players you want. Obviously, there are some fluky ones. If you did really lose 3 offensive linemen and Jamar, that would be an issue. But take any 4 starters not named Burrow into January, and I'll take this team to win the Super Bowl. I mean, or at least still be a Super Bowl contender, right? I don't know how you couldn't. If you look, I thought about this, probably after Burrow, what do you want to go? Chase, Orlando Brown Jr., Cam Taylor-Britt, and Trey Hendrickson, probably the first 4 that you would want to make sure you have there, probably your big pieces that you want to make sure you do not lose. But stay healthy, and 14-3 with the Super Bowl win, absolutely possible. It feels a lot better to talk about the ceiling than the floor, huh? So what else goes right? The transition has to be smooth on both sides of the ball, particularly offense. Defense, not as many new pieces, but offense. You got a new offensive coordinator. And as much as we've liked the little bit we've seen of Dan Pitcher, and as much as you have no reason not to think he'll be excellent given the position he's been in the last few years, it's still a new guy back there. It's still a first-time offensive coordinator in the NFL. There might be some speed bumps. There probably will be. So you've got Dan Pitcher. You've got a new play caller. You've got or a new play design, new guy. You've got a new offensive coordinator. You've got a new right tackle, whether it's Mims, whether it's Brown. We'll see. It's a new guy. Jonah Williams has been on that offensive line forever. Jamar, he's missed a big chunk of training camp. How will that play out? Again, as of me recording this, he has not signed a new contract, and we'll see what happens. New running backs, talked about that a little bit earlier. New tight end and a pair of leaders going in Boyd and Mixon. And, there it is. Those are things you need to go smoothly. Fortunately for the Bengals, 3 of their first 4 games are teams they should have no problem with. New England, Washington, Carolina. Doesn't matter what's going on. The Bengals should win those 3 games. Going to Kansas City in week 2, obviously probably their most difficult game of the season. But there's no reason for the Bengals. We've seen this issue in the past, is why I bring this up. When they start, 2 years ago, they start 0-2. Last year, not as smooth as you want out of the gate. And yeah, you got to start off well. Let's see. I can't remember who they opened with last year. Losing my mind, man. We'll get there. This is going to drive me insane. I'm sorry I have to stop and do this. But, oh, they were at Cleveland. God, of course I erased that from my mind. How could I not? And they got housed 24-3. God, I mean, I was thinking when I looked that up, and I'm sorry to bring this up during the positive portion of the show, but I was thinking when I looked that up, like, oh, when it hits me, or when I see it, it'll hit me like, oh, of course, that was it. Yeah. What an awful game. I'm sorry to even bring that up, guys. Good God. So we got to have a smooth transition because you don't want to start 0-2, I believe, for what would be a second consecutive season, right? Because in 2022, I mean, see, here I am going, yeah. All right. Let's get back to the positive stuff. Here we go. So, yeah, start out, smooth transition. No more 0-2 starts, for the love of God. Defense, there's not as much turnover. Lou Anarumo still in charge there, so you expect things to go a little more smoothly. Obviously, 2 new safeties in Geno Stone and Von Bell. Sheldon Rankins now starting on that interior defensive line with DJ Reader in Detroit. They still don't really have, Rankins isn't the ogre of a man that DJ Reader is. So there's still some things there. They're going to need some guys to step up, some third and short guys, but we'll see how that goes. But the defense, there's not as much worry about. But in general, the team comes out firing. The team transitions smoothly with all the new pieces. They fit in well. So that's something else they need to go right in order to go 14-3. As I kick the camera, let me adjust that. So those are the big keys. Again, stay healthy. It's not like a fun topic to talk about, but that's it. The good news is we're no longer in the days of, well, if Andy Dalton can step up, and I know we're in year 5 of Joe Burrow, but I'm just reminding you there's a lot of teams out there who their ceiling requires a lot of things to go right. The Bengals don't really have that. The Bengals thing to go right is stay healthy. Stay healthy, and you've got the guys to win a Super Bowl, and no one in their right mind would argue otherwise. Simple as that. Get the new guys comfortable. Make Mike Gesicki a red zone threat. I'm hoping that by November, he is reminding us of that Tyler Eifert we saw where he just seemed unstoppable and scored like 11 touchdowns this year or that year. So we need to see that secondary kind of the same. 2 new safeties. DJ Turner, second-year guy. Cam Taylor-Britt is, I think we all agree, and I've been really going in on him on this show as a number 1 lockdown corner, so I hope he proves me right. But there's some things they need to iron out, sure, but every team has that. They've got a lot less than most teams do, and I think those 2 things I go through, I mean, that's the difference between 14-3 and a number 1 seed, and can you imagine hosting the freaking AFC Championship in Cincinnati, Ohio? That would be insane. Insane. Something that hasn't been done, I think, since January of '89. Wow. Yeah. And maybe, 11-6 isn't bad either, but I think, that's the truth, right? 14-3 is the ceiling, 10-7 is the floor. It's probably somewhere in between there. We'll probably go 11-6, probably go 12-5, somewhere right there. At any rate, give us a home playoff game. Let's see what happens. Roll the dice. I like Joey B in January, right? January Joe, maybe we'll call him after this. The ceiling also includes a Joe Burrow MVP win. Who would they beat? For things to really go, we get greedy now. We say the ceiling, we say the Super Bowl. Who would be the ideal opponents? Who would be the sweetest opponents for the Bengals to beat? If they were the number 1 seed, so they'd have to play divisional and then AFC Championship, right? So is it like Ravens, Chiefs? It'd have to be, right? Really, any AFC North team in the divisional and then the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. That would have to be, again, I'm being greedy. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers. I'm just saying those would be the 2 opponents that would make it even sweeter. And then in the Super Bowl, as, again, way ahead of myself, I want you to go back if you think I'm being a little bit arrogant here, and I want you to listen to the ceiling portion as well. In the Super Bowl, would it be Niners or Rams? I think for the old heads, you go Niners because the Bengals lost to them in Super Bowl 16 and 23. Beating the Rams would be, this is how greedy we get here. Who do you want to beat in the Super Bowl? Who would be more fun? I'd say Niners. You got to go Niners. and then Rams, and then probably Cowboys because they're the Cowboys. Little old Cincinnati, Ohio, taking down America's team. Um, so yeah, that's where we're at. Like I said, my friend brought it up to me. I thought it'd make for a fun show. I needed to record one a few days early as this comes out, I should be in Greece, which is pretty cool. Last big vacation before football season starts. And at your ceiling and floor. Floor is 10-7 as a wild card. You go into the playoffs, you see what happens. The ceiling is 14-3. Number one seed, Joe Burrow wins MVP. They win the Super Bowl. Not a bad floor and ceiling, but again, as we're in year 5, as I talked about last week, all the contracts they have coming up after this season, you got to try to get one for this squad. You got to want one for this squad so bad. We will commiserate for our lifetimes if this current squad, because they're going to lose more and more guys every year, if this current squad does not get a ring, it's going to be something we talk about forever. So let's hope it happens this year. Let's do one for the road. Let's see here. We've been going 26 minutes already. Hopefully you're still listening. I don't know how entertaining these types of episodes are, but it's fun for me, which is cool. One for the road. As I was kind of looking to see what the play, I looked back at that Steelers question I talked about at the top where they were 10-7 and still made the playoffs. I wanted to see how many 10-7 teams got in last year. And I realized an AFC North team has been in the AFC Championship 3 straight seasons. Of course, the Bengals in 21-22, and then Baltimore hosted it last year with Kansas City being the opponent all 3 times. And I wondered if that had ever happened before. It has happened once. It was actually 4 consecutive years from 1986 to 1989 when the Cleveland Browns went 3 times in 4 years, which is just unthinkable at this point. To think that the lowly Browns, who wet the bed every season one way or another, both on the field and off, were in the AFC Championship 3 out of 4 years. Of course, they played Denver all 3 times, also an AFC West team, like Kansas City in the modern era, and they went 0-3. And oh, by the way, that one team that wasn't Cleveland that made it in was your Cincinnati Bengals. They beat the Bills and then went on to Super Bowl 23, where they lost to Joe Montana and the 49ers. But I just thought that was an interesting one. That's the only time the division ever had a representative in 4 straight years. Of course, we'd like to see it happen again this year with the Bengals getting back to the AFC Championship. They would have a shot to make it 3 times in 4 years. And again, just insane to me, maybe because I live in an area where I grew up in an area where the Browns are the popular team. And my entire lifetime, because I was born, that last AFC Championship they went to, I would have been not even a year old yet. And my entire life, they have been a laughingstock, as long as I can remember, anyways. I know in the early 90s, they weren't terrible, but I was just learning to walk, man. I wasn't paying attention to the NFL. So, again, not trying to knock on them, although maybe I am, but it's just insane to me to look back and realize that in a lot of people's lifetimes who are listening to this, if you're under 40, you lived at the same time that the Cleveland Browns went to the AFC Championship 3 out of 4 years. Just nutty. Just absolutely nutty. All right, we're going to stop this one. I appreciate everyone tuning in, having fun. The season's right around the corner. High school football is about to start up, and then we get college football. I think, we're already, again, I'm recording this a week in advance because I'm going to be in Greece, full disclosure. So maybe some crazy things happen between now and then. Maybe, I don't know. But at any rate, I hope you've enjoyed the episode and more to come. If you like the show, tell a friend about it. Give it a rating, man. Those things make a lot of difference. Comment on the YouTube channel. You can even say something mean if you want. Just get that engagement up. I like what we're doing here, and I hope some more people can see it. And yeah, man, it's going to be a fun season. So let's hope it's that 14-3 season. It's in all likelihood somewhere more in between, but give me 9 in January and the Bengals are going to be just fine. All right, I'm at Matt Edwards on the website formerly known as Twitter. That's where I do most of my talking about the Bengals, trying to do a little more outside of that. I don't want to join TikTok, dude. I'm 35 years old, but maybe I will. YouTube, fun too. We're doing most of the numbers. Not most of the numbers, but a lot of numbers on YouTube, which I was bad about the first time we did this. So if you go to youtube.com/InTheJunglePod, that's where you can find us. And it's been fun. We're going to keep having fun as we get the season started up here. That's how we'll win the show. It's In the Jungle. If you like it, tell a friend, give it a rating. I already said that. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.